Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Baisakhi and welcome to our session today. While we are still in the middle of an ongoing COVID crisis, and there is no escaping the reality that the number of cases pan India are once again on a steady rise, we at Ladies Study Group in Kolkata are determined to do our best to keep up the celebratory mood for all of you for Baisakhi and for our upcoming Bengali New Year. And to take this forward, we have the absolute honor and privilege of having a very, very special guest with us today, a name that spells aristocracy in these parts, as she is the great great grandniece of India's most beloved poet, Rabindranath Tagore. Our guest today, for you specially, is Sharmila Tagore. Sharmila ji is a Padma Bhushan awardee and has had a glorious career of over 6 decades in cinema. She has effortlessly and with such impeccable grace and elegance that is synonymous with her traversed the gulf between tradition and modernity in her personal life and between artistic excellence and commercial success in her professional life. And that's not all. There are just so many other roles that she has taken on. She has been the chief of the Central Board for Film Certification, and she has served on the board of several film festivals, including Cannes, as a jury member. She is one half of India's most celebrated couples and is the head of a family of superstars and celebrities. There are just so many facets to Sharmila Tagore. So let's welcome Sharmila ji to our screens this evening to share her Safar, her journey of life with all of us.
Thank you, Diya, for your very kind words. I mean, it was really a long litany of lots of lovely things. But I wish you had said UNICEF also, because that
Yes,
role I
yes,
really
of
like.
course. Yes,
Because
absolutely. Yes.
representing children and their rights and to speak up on their behalf,
Of
I think it's
course, of
a great
course.
honor
Yes.
and privilege.
I know there's just so much I can say, and I think I can just go on and on. But before I ask you my first question, I want to say that for me, you have always been and you continue to be one of the most beautiful women who have ever walked on this earth. And I'm so privileged and honored to share the screen space with you today. So let me
Thank you.
begin with my with my first question. I know that you were born in Kanpur and you spent a part of your childhood in Jamshedpur and then came to Calcutta. And you have described yourself as an accidental actress. But you were so young at that time, just 13 years old, and Satyajit Ray cast you to play such a young girl in the last of his trilogy, Opur Shonshar, which I think released in May 1959. And I
That-
believe that that movie is still included in the 100 best films in the world list even today. So
Not
do
just
share
that
with
film, it's the trilogy. Trilogy.
amazing,
Yes,
amazing. The
yes.
trilogy is included, yes. So
You
how
too.
did this happen? Can you start right from there?
I have no idea. One day just changed my life. It was such a privilege to meet the great man because he was already making waves. Uh, I come from a very conservative family, Bengali family, and those days working in films were absolutely no because it was not considered a great profession, um, or a vocation also for that matter, because girls from good families didn't work in films, period. But Manik Da, Satyajit Ray was an exception because at that time he was making different kind of films, and his films were going abroad and winning lots of awards and acclaim. So when this happened, there was no opposition at all. In fact, my father, I think, was over the moon, and he said, of course," and uh, but just don't let her make a fool of herself. And but the opposition came from my school,
Yes.
the association at that time. As I said, uh, it was not not an attractive image to work in films. So she, Mrs. Das, our principal, complained and protested and said that she'll be a very bad influence if she
Oh
works
my
in
God.
film. Yes.
Okay.
My father, of course, said, well, I'm afraid then she'll have to leave your school because I'm
Amazing.
not going to give up this kind of opportunity. Nobody asked me because I guess I was, that's why UNICEF is so important and children's rights are so important, but nobody asked
Absolutely,
me.
yes.
Anyway, um, and then of course I had to change school and go from Bengali medium to English medium, and there was, but yes, I mean, Opu Shamshar, can you imagine? It just completely changed my life, uh, I mean, everything. It's such a privilege to have worked with him.
And I think the first scene that you shot for Opu Shonshar was very prophetic, you've said, because you were standing at this threshold. Tell us a little bit about that scene that you shot.
That's my regret because uh, I think Manikda must have been what, 33 at that time. But to me, he was ancient, like I felt, oh my God. So I never really chatted with him. Shomitra, my co star, that was also his debut. He talked with him a lot, and because he wanted to be an actor and he knew where he was going, where he was coming from. He was already working in theaters. So
Mhm.
I was just a schoolgirl. So I didn't have any idea, and I was very tongue tied and was treated him with huge respect. But there are a couple of things that come to my mind today. In fact, Catherine Burge, who made a film, a documentary film on Soumitra Chatterjee, took me to that Tala house, the outdoor area where Opu and Apurna lives. And that where they get married and come and make their home.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
he took me there, and 30 years later, that place hadn't changed
Oh my
at
God.
all. And
Amazing.
we walk up that Opu brings his bride, and we walk up the steps, and he stays right on top, Chile Kotha, as we say in Bengali, and it's a hub of lot of people. It's like a beehive, and it's impossible to sort of everybody is looking at you to have your privacy. But once you get up there and you open that door and you get onto the roof, you're under a open sky, and you're completely. So I realized why Manita had chosen that particular location, which spoke to the poet in Opu. And then that theme of uh, metaphor of the rail, trains,
Right,
and the
right.
way of the train. So that was next door. So Manita's choice of locations, I mean, the locations were also kind of protagonists. So I
Right.
learned that aspect. And of course, the particular scene that you talk about, we were in front of a closed door, I mean, behind the closed door, and the camera was on the other side with Manigda and Shubhro Kaku, who was the DOP and the unit. So while we were waiting for our, action, uh, Manigda's instruction to start to do whatever we had to do, Shomitra asked me, "Are you feeling nervous?" So I said, "No. Why should I feel nervous?" And then there was no time to chat because Manida said, "Start sound, camera, action." And Shomitra opens the door and then looks at me and say, "Isho." So I crossed the threshold, and I just wondered later. Suddenly one night, actually, I just woke up and said, "Why did he choose that scene? I mean, out of all the other scenes, easier scenes, why did he choose that particular scene?" And it was so symbolic
Symbolic,
that
absolutely.
this
Yes.
girl who left her home, her parents at the age of a very impossibly young age, and come, with a completely an unknown person, you
True,
know,
true.
begin her life. And so what she must be feeling. And I think I was
True.
probably feeling a bit like that because uh, another world awaited behind
Absolutely.
that
Yes.
closed door.
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe because
Thank
of that, her mind and
thank
I was sort of feeling similar emotions, perhaps. I don't know. I'll never know. I
yes.
should have asked him.
Thank God you crossed that threshold that day. And that's why we are here today. And then I know that in 1960 you did Devi, and you were only 14 years old at that point. And that again was such a difficult role for someone so young. So, how did you manage that? And for our viewers, in case they haven't seen Devi, I think you were a child bride who turned into this goddess figure, right?
Well, it's going to take a very long time to tell the story. So, very briefly, the patriarch of the family,
Hmm.
he Manikda tells his story in a sort of a zamindari background, and the patriarch of the family is a Kali Bhakt, and Kali, who's a destroyer as well as a creator.
Correct.
And this young girl, completely unlettered village girl, again impossibly young, is married to his son, who's studying in Calcutta and is influenced by
Hmm.
the so-called modern thinking of the 19th century. So this is the uh, very timid rise of rationalism propagated by Ram Mohan Roy, etc., against the backdrop of a very orthodox, superstitious, perhaps, uh, that kind of orthodoxy.
Yeah.
So, and how this young girl becomes a victim of that orthodoxy. And, the
Something
film is
so
concerned.
relevant, I think. So relevant even today, I think, at so many levels, isn't it?
Well, a woman continues to face injustice in the name of
Absolutely. Absolutely.
honor, family. Uh, she's fed less. She's not sent to school. She is not given medical attention. Then all her first she has to escape female feticide, and
Yes.
then later her problems are compounded with early marriage, early
Correct.
childbirth, because she's anemic, because she's not been fed. So all kinds of complications happen to her because she doesn't have a voice. She doesn't, uh, all the decision making process goes to the male members. And even in films, if you've seen, the
True.
hero, of course, is great, but even the villain is more powerful because
Yes.
even he affects the society more. Women are so-called goody-goody. I mean, I'm talking about my time. Things have changed vastly, thank God.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
God. I mean, I watch Netflix and I'm amazed at the kind of
Yes.
characters,
True.
watching
Yes. Yes.
Bombay Begum. And look at the characters people can play. We never had that opportunity.
Never had that. Yes.
Back in the 60s, when I joined, before that, as you say, 59, people thought differently. So there was
I
no
think there was
way.
a lot of there was protest also, right, for this film. I think the Orthodox Hindus also protested this movie when it
Yes,
was
they
released.
thought it. Yes, the film did very badly at the box office, and there were protests, and Manika had to uh, sort of clarify that it was against the orthodoxy of Hinduism and not against Hinduism per se.
Absolutely.
That,
Yes.
in fact, he was a Brahmo,
Yes.
uh, and that's why the criticism were a little bit more strident.
More. Yes.
But
Yes.
uh, but to just show his kind of involvement with the subject, he wrote a poem there when this man
Okay.
daughter is miraculously cured by Devi
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
I play. So he says that ebar toke chini ebar toke chine chima, etc. And it sounds exactly like an Atul Prasadi song, but it was written by him. So,
Amazing.
he put himself in that space and really thought of that. So, most certainly, it was not an anti-Hindu film. It was
Yes.
more, more about a girl, a young girl who doesn't know who she is. She
Correct.
lacks. There is an absence of a will to protect herself. She doesn't
Yes.
have it. She thinks if the father-in-law says, how can he be wrong? He's the head of the family. And if I run
This
away
is
with you, if something terrible happens to you, tomar jodi kono amongol hoy. So
hmm.
that is how a woman is trained to put the honor or the the whatever of the family,
Mm-hmm.
concern of the family before her own concern, and we continue to do that because
You
our
can
moral
true.
compass
Yes,
is built. The moment a child is born, you start differentiating. A girl is what is expected of a woman and what is expected of a man. It
absolutely.
continues.
Yes,
So
I
men,
agree.
women have to be good. Women shouldn't run fast. Women shouldn't speak too much. Women should wear a certain kind of clothes, etc. So I think it was more about that how
Yeah.
she prioritizes her family and
In
is
fact,
completely clueless about who she is.
I agree. And in fact, I would urge everyone who's watching us today, if you haven't seen Devi, do watch it because even today I think it's so relevant. But
But the
Sharmila
quality
ji, coming,
of print, if you don't see a good print, don't see it then.
yes, that's
That's not.
true. That's true. Yes. But, we all know about the public genius of Satyajit Ray, Manikta, as you call him. But can you share some private strands about what was it like to work with a filmmaker of his stature? I know that there are so many stories, so just maybe a few things that I remember. I think he used to draw next to his scripts for you. He used to make little drawings. Is that correct?
Yes. He used to give us, all of us, uh, a bound script,
Amazing.
bound script and handwritten script.
Do you still have those?
Yes, handwritten script.
Wow.
So those days, of course, there was no computer, but there was at least typewriter, but they were not typed. So it was handwritten script. I mean, they're my absolute treasures.
I'm
And
sure.
yes, he would draw that particular frame. So everything was in his mind, everything was thought out because he didn't have the budget of Kuristan Bergman, whom he competed with them.
Hmm.
Their budget was completely different. Their access to better technology was also there. He didn't have any of that. So he went very prepared because he could only afford 1 or 2 takes and not more than that because it would cost far too much. So he was
Yeah.
well prepared and he didn't over instruct. He just told you, he narrated. We were also given a script. We were not allowed to memorize our
Okay.
lines.
Okay.
Absolutely. He didn't encourage us to do that, but he would read
Interesting.
out the scene to you, and somehow you got it. The way he read
Amazing.
it out, and he would come very close to you and bend down and make eye contact, and somehow you implicitly trusted him. And I remember when we did that outdoor shooting for days and nights in the forest, it was
Mhm.
very hot. And for the first time, I found out. I mean, I knew that he was a musician. He could play the piano. He could read and write music. All that we knew. But he could whistle so well. He could
Wow.
whistle, Brahms and Tchaikovsky and all that.
Wow.
He was a very exceptionally gifted person.
And always worked on a shoestring budget. I heard you saying that. And yet he competed, I think, with Kurosawa and all that level of
His contemporaries
filmmaker.
those days, and they had, I mean, in Shonar Kella, there is a chase sequence. I mean,
Mhm.
for that, Kurosawa would have had 3 or 4 cameras, and he had just
True.
one. And for
Amazing.
the hero, for Nayok, when he does it's the whole thing is shot in a train. So he erected the train. His art director Bongshi Chandragupta, another
Mhm.
fantastic person who contributed so much to his films. Charulata, they stopped working together. Shubroto Mitra and Bongshi Chandragupta and Manikda. And Shubroto Mitra, as you know, uh, discovered this bounce light. Again,
Yes.
he didn't have the right
The
light,
bounce
so
line. Yes.
it's a
Yes.
certain kind of light. So he created that, and now everyone uses it. And Bongshida added so much with his sets. And I remember this train was absolutely, you couldn't tell when he cut to the real train and back, you couldn't tell the difference. And also the back projection uh, of the train when it's from my perspective, uh, like behind me, the train
Mhm.
is moving another way, and then the other side. You know what I'm trying to say? There is a
Yes, of course. Yes. Yes. Yes.
and all
The
that was
movement. Yes.
so seamlessly. And at that time, it was in 70 something perhaps. And imagine the without any technological help and how they did that. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
No wonder he got the Lifetime Achievement Oscar Award, right?
Yes,
No
and
wonder, yes.
how well, uh, uh, Audrey Hepburn came to Calcutta to give it to him. And when she had
Okay.
to speak on the, when she announced, they did a little clip which was shown at the on the day. But on the
Mhm.
day she spoke, and she rehearsed how to pronounce Shotyajit Rai, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
so beautifully. I mean,
How
I can't
nice.
imagine anybody else. You could see her love for him and her
Amazing.
respect and admiration, and the way she said Shotyajit Rai. It's lovely.
Lovely. So from Satyajit Ray to Bombay, and I think it was 1964, you were 19 years old in Kashmir Ki Kali, and you burst onto the Bombay scene with that movie with Shami Kapoor
I
ji.
did burst. I mean, when Shamil Kapoor is there, he does all the bursting. He's actually behind it.
So how did this move happen? It must have been quite a radical move. And what was the reaction of people in Calcutta when you did this? Was it like you were letting them down and moving away? Was
Yes, all
that
of
the impression? All of that, right? Yes.
it.
So tell us
Because
about that
he's
move.
very possessive, and naturally they felt that I was letting them down. From Shotyajit
Like a
Rai's
bit, like a
to
betrayal.
yes, Shakti Samanta, and that also Shammi Kapoor, no less. So yes, it was all that. But it was going from regional cinema to national cinema, and it was a huge learning experience. And I learned so much because when you're making a regional film, you are the language or the clothes you wear, the house that you live in, all speaks in one tone, and it conveys and instantly the audience identifies with it. But when it's a Hindi film, then the lady of the house is wearing a certain attire, the maid
True,
is wearing
true,
something else, the
true.
dialects are different, and those days, again, I'm talking about my time, because they wanted to have a pan India identity. They wouldn't give you a surname, so you'll be Miss Deepa,
Okay.
or that came later. So I mean, just imagine how much we have changed over the years. And in 62, when I joined Kashmir Ki Kali, I think was released in 63, around that time. And uh, Chinese aggression had just happened. And the, the euphoria about independence had sort of started waning a little bit. There was a lot of unemployment. There was a lot of shortage of grain. So Indian films, which has always responded to the pulse of the nation, became
Mhm.
escapist in a big way. And there were 6 or 7 songs. Everybody went to Kashmir, beautiful location, a local girl with a city man. So that was the story, and love story. So Kashmir Ki Kali was like that, with
Yes,
beautiful song of Hopi Nayar and
yes,
Asha.
the beautiful song "Chand Se Roshan Chehra," I think, with on the iconic Dal
Because
Lake.
his first shooting was on the Dal Lake,
Yes.
Diwana Hua Badal.
Okay.
And I remember Asha ji and Upi Nayar Sahab was there. And after my shot, Asha ji kind of embraced me and said, "Well done, so proud of you." And said she was so gracious and wonderful, because I was very nervous, and I was, lip sync is a big thing, because in Bengali we don't do that kind of thing. So it was
And Eastman
challenging.
Color too. I think Eastman Color too. That was the first time you were doing a color film, right?
Gosh, thank God the colors have changed better, because it looks so. Yeah, especially
And
look
then,
lovely.
Sharmila ji, I believe you had a very special visitor when you were shooting Isharo Isharo Mein for the same film. Can you tell us about that? Somebody with curly eyelashes. Who was that?
God, I just a crush on him. I just seen him, but
You're talking about
never
Shashi Kapoor for our members.
the best looking person I'd ever seen. So, and it turned out to be that he was my fan. He'd seen Opu Shamshad, and I thought
I believe so, yes.
that I was very good. So he did come, and I couldn't give a shot. And then Shakti ji said, "Will you please leave the set?" And then, of
Literally.
course, he left. And then we chatted, and we became very close friends, because Jennifer and he stayed in town. Most
Okay.
film people stayed towards Juhu, because it was closer to the
Okay.
studios. And there was no, those days, commuting also. There was no Worli Sea Link, of course, that was very new. But even otherwise, the other flyovers hadn't happened. So it took a long while. But I stayed in town, and so did he. So that was another thing we had in common. And he was the only actor those days before Amitabh who was punctual on the set. He would
Okay.
come at 9 o'clock shift at 9 o'clock. The others, you could just suggest a time to them. I mean, then they would come whenever they felt like it. And we would be ready with our makeup. And those days, the sets were not air conditioned. So, with all our, and especially my buffet and everything. And
Yes, your bufo.
I think I'll be, yeah, scarred for life for that. Anyway, so they all walk in at about 11:30, and all that has changed now. If a
Right.
hero today, an actor today, keeps people waiting, he'll be out of job because nobody can
True.
afford a person who's not punctual. But those
But
days, you could only.
so going back to that same time when you had just come to Mumbai, you had come alone, I believe. You were not chaperoned. You were staying on your own. I think first Sun and Stan and then the Taj Hotel. How was that being all on your own in a new city?
Well, I was most certainly a social suspect because they couldn't understand who is this woman. In Calcutta, I was Diya Tagore's daughter. Everybody knew me. It had a different kind of identity. But in Big Bad Bombay, it was different because if I was staying alone in jail, eyebrows were raised instantly. But I didn't want to be involved with housekeeping and keeping. But anyway, one day Shakti ji came and said, "It's about time you started that." So I had to rent a place and move out. But I stayed in Taj for 2 years,
Two
and it
years,
was so,
my God.
yes, it was such a lovely. That's why when that attack took place at Taj, I felt, you know, part of my memory was burning. It was so. I
I
mean,
can
it, such a
imagine.
personal feeling I
So
had.
painful, so
Yes,
painful.
I
Yes.
used to come back late from shooting at night, and there was this hotel detective, and I would chat for about 20 minutes, gossiping, and he would tell me who'd come and who'd gone, and everybody quiet and nobody knows anything about it. But the hotel detective knew everything, and he would share them with me. So that was great fun. So yes, I
Amazing. So
enjoyed
I,
my.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think once you were there to stay. And I think 100 movies in Bengali, Hindi, and English. But I have to ask you now, once you were in Mumbai, when did you first meet Tiger Patodi? I mean, it is a story better than I think all Mills and Bourne romances any of us have read. So do tell us about it. I know he was the most sought after, handsome bachelor, cricket captain, and you were this movie star. So tell us about this romance. Where did he first meet you, or you first meet him?
My family has always been very fond of cricket, my mother particularly. Later on, though, she had to take a sorbitrate because she would get so excited, India, and then she would say, when Saurav Ganguly was under attack, she would go red in the face and said, "How can they say that about him?" So she was quite a fanatic, and even then, and I mean, we were all very fond of cricket and cricketers, so that was the age that we were all crazy. Uh, so I think I met him then in around 65, 1965, at one of the, I don't know, somebody's party or something. I can't.
ML Jaisimha's party.
No, it was not. Emil Jaisima was
Oh,
also there.
oh, he
They
was
both
there
of
at the
them,
party.
both of them were together, but it was somebody else's party.
Okay,
Not very well known to me or him,
okay.
but we got to chat. We got to talk to each other, and uh, and that was that.
That
And he
was
was
that.
very English at that time. He had this very British accent, and he would tell a joke, and nobody could understand it, and he would laugh at his own jokes, and we would be citizens. So, yeah, so you had to learn
I
his
think
alphabet all over again.
I think long before Anushka was blamed for distracting Virat, you were blamed for distracting Tiger in certain cricket matches results. Is that true? Did that happen?
Most certainly, and those days we were not. We used to sit with the crowd actually. Actually, the crowd in Bengal, I never felt, uh, threatened or anything because, it's, I still feel Calcutta is my place and I'm very fond
Absolutely.
of it. And I think that people like me there.
Of
Anyway, so I was
course.
there watching and it was slightly, uh, you know, slightly cordoned off. My father, I think Tiger dropped a catch or something, and my father screamed from somewhere else, "You shouldn't have kept him up all night," or something. Anything about anything. I mean, can you imagine? Even Muslim. Yeah, yeah.
Is it true that he actually bought 7 refrigerators for you at one point? Is that a true story?
That was a message he left on
Okay,
with
okay.
his staff, saying that, and those days again, there was all these imported things. We didn't have access to anything, if you remember. Those were
Yes.
the bomb time. We couldn't travel. Uh, Nobody was interested. You couldn't get all these things. So I was very intrigued who's left 5 fridges, you know. So I thought it was some mistake. So I thought I should clarify that. So I called him
Yeah.
back, of course, on the other side, it was him. And then he came over and we got to know each other.
Oh, such a beautiful story, really. And so then tell us about the shooting of Evening in Paris and what happened over there. Because that again was a very big, part of your whole romance. And I know that he visited you there, and then I think the unit even ostracized you because he visited you. I mean, how dare they? What happened there?
Um, Evening in Paris, I think we were shooting there, and Tiger was playing for Sussex then. He was captaining Sussex, and
Okay,
he broke a finger. So he was out
okay,
of cricket for about a couple of weeks. He couldn't play. So he visited me in Paris. So we moved out of the hotel, and so naturally there was a lot of disapproval from the unit, and they said, "Oh well, she's our girl. How can she? We need to protect her from everybody else." And so yeah, there was a little bit of that, and it all ended okay. And then so we had a very nice time in. I mean, of course, there was a lot of work. We did many shootings. Before that, I remember we were in Interlaken, and Nayuk was going to be screened in Berlin.
okay.
And Manikda invited me to come to Berlin from Interlaken, which is a stone's throw. But I wouldn't go because Tiger was coming to visit me.
So
So I said,
sweet.
no, I can't because she was quite upset, but I didn't go. And so came back in Paris. And then from there, we went to Niagara Falls to shoot and then came back. And that was the year we decided to get married and we broke the news to Amma, Tiger's mother.
Okay. So was it on the French Bastille Day? I think was that the day of your engagement or your
Yeah,
proposal?
I think he proposed to me then. And
That's
it
what I
was
read
so
somewhere.
lovely that night because, uh, Bastille Day, or everybody is on the road. I don't know how it
Okay.
is, but then everyone, and they were all in the fountain, drinking and chatting. And so we went from one restaurant to the other. And so I think he told me, how about getting married? I said, yes, of course. Why not? That sort of thing. So it was such a lovely day, when
Mm.
the whole city is having fun and you're
True.
sharing that joy with everybody else, which we as actors can't do in our own because
Spaces,
you
yes,
we get
yes.
mobbed, we get recognized. So
True.
in Paris, when you're incognito, it was such a lovely day.
That's why I said it's better than a Mills and Boone romance, right? Because look at the way you've described it. I mean, we can
No, I
all
think
just
Mills
say
and
that.
Boons are far more interesting and far more
Not
hair.
at all. No.
Ours was nothing compared to Mills and Boons.
Not at all. So tell me, what drew you to Tiger? You were acting with all the leading men. You had all of them around you. So what was it that made you choose him? You must have had everybody vying for your attention.
You want to have, what was that? Like Simi's interview. You want me to my and tell you all about all those things. Well, I think it's well, I just liked him. I liked his sense of humor, And I felt this man is not going to hurt me on purpose. And I trusted him, and he was gentle and a gentleman. And as I said, I just loved his humor. It was very wacky, but
Yeah.
all the same, I loved it.
I believe he's. What about the Ghalib story? You were saying something about
Yeah,
that's very funny.
yeah. He told
Tell
me
us
that
about that.
I've written this wonderful thing for you, because he used to sing and used to, play the flute and all that. Chaudhary ka chand and mere dil jalta hai to jalte do. He was a Begum Akhtar fan. He was a Talat Mahmood fan. So one day he told me that, I've written this. So I thought he may have that dile nada tujhe hua kya hai akhir. So anyway, so next day I think I was shooting with Firoz in this film called Safar. So I told him that very proudly that, Tiger has written this for me. And he said, "You idiot woman, this is Ghali, for God's sake. This is not, this is not Tiger." So
Well,
yeah,
that's
he
a
was
true prankster.
constantly doing that with
How
everybody.
nice. I think humor is so important in life.
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
it's what keeps us all going. So, Shamalaji, knotted blouses, bouffants, you really made your mark. And then, of course, the famous two-piece bikini shoot with Filmfare in August 1966. What was
Wow.
that like? I think
I don't know. I just thought I looked nice, and it was
you did
entirely my.
amazing.
In fact, the photographer was kind of hesitant, but I said, "You, why not? It'll look good and blah blah." But when I saw the reaction, it was quite vitriolic, and there were lots of. I mean, those days we didn't have social media, but it was very critical. In fact, I was in London when this was published. So when I came
Okay.
back, Shakti ji called me and said, this is like we have to do some damage control. And so I was very upset. So I sent a telegram to Tiger, and Tiger said, "I'm sure you're looking very nice." So he was very
Which is
supportive.
very
But I
supportive, yes.
learned that if you're a public figure, uh, you have some responsibility. You have to understand who your audience is and what they expect from you. So I think that's a
True.
responsibility a public persona has. Uh, so I think I learned that while people are attracted towards glamour, but they don't really have all that much respect for that.
True.
I
True.
wanted
Yes.
to be respected. I wanted to be liked. And so I slowly started changing my image. In fact, after Evening in Paris, uh, so Shakti ji was making two films. One was a big film with Shami Kapoor, and the other one, because he had Rajesh Khanna, these United producers, they all had him free for one film or two films. So he wanted to make a quick film and named it Aradhna.
Aradhana, yes.
And I said, they told me that, would you like to do it? Because you have to play an old, his mother and all that. I said, of course, I would love to play it. Don't you dare give it to anybody else. So I accepted. And so that changed my image. From
Of
that
course, yes.
onwards, I was taken far more seriously. And people liked me, I think.
Yes, that movie was amazing. In fact, tell us what that experience that you had when you went with Shakti ji to the cinema hall to watch it, to have your own viewing of the movie
I've
and what
said that so
happened.
many times. I think everybody knows about it.
No, we don't.
But
We don't.
Um, so Shakti ji was watching, we were all watching the first show, 3 o'clock show. And so there is this first time Madan Mohan, who's a jailer, who comes to me in the jail. And for the first time, my face is shown with white hair
With
and
the
as an
white hair, yes.
old person. Terrible makeup, but anyway, so that's how it was. And there was an audible gasp in the auditorium, and
Okay,
people started laughing, sniggering. And at that
okay.
point, he left the theater. He used to smoke, and he said, he dragged on his cigarette and left. He says, "Oh God, this film is bombed." But it's a very small scene for about a couple of minutes. And at the end of the scene, end of that couple of minutes, you could hear the audience sniffling. But
Oh, yes.
so somebody ran after him and said, Shakti ji, please come back. I mean, so that, and in every time that thing happened for the first 3 or 4 weeks, it ran on for 50 weeks. Every time
Amazing.
they laughed and every time they cried in that space of 2 minutes.
And you
So
got the Filmfare Award also, I think, for that film.
I did, yes.
You did. And so you were, I believe, shooting for this film and doing days and nights in the forest simultaneously. Is that correct?
Yes, it clashed with because
For the
Manika,
song, I think.
the song Mere Sapno Ki Rani Kab Aayegi
Yes,
Tu.
yes,
And
yes.
that was also very important because it was in Darjeeling and it was that special train. And Shakti ji had planned everything, and Rajesh Khanna's dates were very valuable because all 12 producers had signed him and wanted him for uh, time. So, um, but when Maninda asked me, I said there is no way. And Maninda's requirement was also a continuous 30 days or something.
Hmm.
And he could only shoot at that time. So he couldn't wait because there were so many actors and he had taken everybody's dates. And the time was also very important because the forest looked the way he wanted it to look only in April. So, so I told Shakti ji that you have to wait. So Shakti ji was very, very upset. But he cooperated and he did my scene in indoors in the
And
studio.
okay, okay.
And if he
So,
wouldn't have done or something, it would have been another story. But it became such
super
a
hit.
super hit that he he repeated me. In fact, he wanted me for Pati Patang also, but
Okay,
I was then planning Saif.
okay.
So I said no, I can't. I mean, it would have been different now because now people just work in one film. So if they're
Correct, correct.
pregnant, they finish the film and then they rest and then they go back to the other
Correct.
film. But
Yes.
in our time, we were working about 3 or 4 films together. So I had to finish Choti Bahu, Safar, many other films. So I couldn't. Uh, so it was times again were different. So I said no to Katipatan.
Yeah.
It was very
And
sad.
but it was amazing despite those different times. You started off with Kashmir Ki Kali, where you did a single role, and then with Shami Kapoor, and then you did Evening in Paris with Shami Kapoor, where you did a double role. So full marks to you on that. But I think you've always said that the male actor got a lot of bhau in those days. Is that right? And the women actors did a lot of Rona Dhona and the famous Rajesh Khanna line, Pushpa, I hate tears, which he said to you. So tell us a little bit about the typical roles that one had to play.
Like I said, that Indian audience didn't want, so you couldn't play any negative roles. So for that negative roles, there was Shashikala, there was Helen,
The
there was
Wham,
Bin,
yes.
yes, the Vamp, and sometimes they had the more interesting parts.
Absolutely,
They
yes.
got to dress up and they got to sing, and whereas the heroine had to be very good and very again prioritize her family before her own needs. So what society was at that time, it reflected uh, in Hindi films. So it was all tears at that point of time.
Tears at that time, yes.
Well, later on, it slowly started changing. And now there is so many options and so many different kinds of films, and we've come such a long way.
Yes, and talk and even
That a
yes,
woman can look after her family, look after her father, would be unthinkable. It can be a son, but how can a woman, how can a daughter look after? That wouldn't have been accepted.
but you
Lamhe
also yes,
because
yes,
again it was the age disparity didn't work with the audience. But then the audience in the 90s, when the audience got exposure to films outside, for that matter, even we didn't have the exposure when we started. Now, when the women or men who come into films are already, they've done their education, they are exposed to so much. We didn't travel, we didn't know anything. So it was more instinct. We didn't see that many films. although I was a member of a film club because I had friends like Ruby Ghosh and others, Ashok Ghosh, and also because of Ray. So we used to see a lot of world cinema. And Calcutta has always been very uh, involved, and our film festivals were also very good. But by and large, we didn't have the exposure like today's, uh, and it's a great career option. Those days it wasn't. I mean,
It
people.
wasn't, yes.
I'll tell you in Kashmir Ki Kali, when we were shooting there, and in one of your Calcutta business families girls photograph was on the front cover of Filmfare.
Oh,
So the
okay.
family bought up the entire edition of that because she
My
was
God.
seen by Shami Kapoor and others. So that's what the society thought of
We've come
films.
a long way. Yes, we've changed a lot, I think.
A good option for a girl. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you also about your movies with Rishikesh Mukherjee. And I know that your first film with him was Anupama, where you played the role of Uma. And he was keen that you remove your bouffant, but you were determined that you had to have the bouffant on. So tell us about that.
Well, I'd rather not really because it's sort of
But,
uh,
but I loved the bouffant. It was really lovely. And then you did Chupke Chupke with him too.
it was a black and white film. So they sort of
Yeah,
framed me in such a way that the bouffant was out of the frame.
he
And
was out
because
of
he
the
told
frame.
me this is a motherless daughter, she's very it doesn't suit. But anyway, there's some stupidity on my part those days.
But
But again, the film was very well liked,
yes, it
and
is very well liked. Yes.
because during this lockdown, I saw all my old films, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and I would rate until one of my better films. And Shashikala, sadly, who just passed away,
Yes.
she was so, the perfect foil and how helpful she is with me. And so I think
And that
it's a lovely,
beautiful, it has a beautiful song also, Kuch Dil Ne Kaha. What a beautiful
lovely
song by
song.
Lata Mangeshkar. Beautiful, my
Yes.
favorite song.
And
So how was it?
we shot it
Sorry,
in
you
Khandal.
shot.
It's not a
Okay,
good
okay.
location, but it looked so lovely.
Lovely song. But then how was it doing Chupke Chupke, comedy, a completely different genre? Is comedy harder to do with Dharmender?
Oh, Dharam was so good because recently I had an operation and I was in hospital, and I was watching Chupke Chupke on my laptop, and I laughed so much because it was I had not seen the film for years, so when I saw it, I just loved Dharam, and it was even now it has a long shelf life, and people still enjoy it. And Om Prakash was so good, and the dialogues and the situations, comedy of errors. So it was a lovely film, and working with Rishikesh is so wonderful because he used to play chess and tell us all dirty jokes, and so it was a long sort of a picnic, and everybody got along with everybody, and everybody respected him. So we just did whatever he said. We were all punctual. Dharam also came on time, and Amitabh, of course, was always on time.
Always
So
on time, yes.
before everybody, before time, he would arrive. If the time was 7 o'clock, he'll be there at 6 o'clock. Maybe he was an
So how,
insomniac. Then.
so how did you balance, being a superstar and you were married, and then you had your babies, you worked through your pregnancies and after your deliveries too. How did that work at those times? Tiger
You know,
must have been very supportive, right?
my first film, as you said, was in 1959. We were talking about the 60s and the 70s. Saif was born in 70. I was married in 68. So, I mean, now it's been like almost many, many years after
Many
that.
years. Yes,
So,
true.
these have been opportunities and these have been milestones. But it doesn't
Yes,
really make a life, if you know what I mean. So, you have to continue to broaden your horizon. You have to
very
continue.
well said.
So I think when I came to Delhi, I went
Yes.
beyond cricket and cinema to more national, so to speak, and understood. And I was more interested in what was happening. I was meeting more interesting people. I was in the board of Air India with Rahul Bajaj chairing it, and
Okay.
was a different kind of exposure. So so Delhi did a lot to me, and then the children were going to the British school. There were 37 nationality in that school, so everything was a learning process, and so I think I grew up there, and many things were happening, and so I think you just have to engage with life and keep yourself relevant. You have to keep yourself informed, and you have to go ahead, because all
Very
these things that
important.
we're talking about now is like 50 years ago or
Yes,
60 years ago or even 40 years ago, maybe a long time ago. So now is what matters, and I
true.
think continuous engagement, that is what keeps you more alive, and
But then
you
you
know
moved from Bombay to Delhi to a joint family structure, and that is a struggle so many women have once they get married. What was that like, to suddenly be in the middle of?
Well, Tiger's mother wasn't keeping very well, and Tiger, being the only son, we came to live with her. And um, so I don't know. I've grown up in a joint family, so my seen my mother living with her sister-in-law, with her mother-in-law. So it wasn't not a huge shock or surprise. The my In Bombay where we lived, downstairs on the seventh floor, my friend Lata, she also lived with her mother-in-law, and my hairdresser also had in-laws staying with her. So in fact, they would tell me, "Aaj ye hua, aaj ye hua." I wish I'd paid more attention to them.
To this story, advice.
The small things matter,
Yes,
things disappear from the fridge, or the staff says something, but not the big things. I think uh, the gain of living in, for the children
absolutely.
especially, to have a grandmother's point of view, and imagine, like we are that many years older, grandmother is that many years older, because I even had a great grandmother living with us. So that just makes you more rich and more layered as a person, when you have the advantage of so many points of view at
Absolutely.
the time. Like my grandmother used to tell us stories about all the strong women of the Tagore family, and one of them was Ganona Nandini Tagore, who was started the nucleus family. She moved out from the Zanana and started living with her husband, who was the first ICS
Okay.
person. Yes, and then she went to Bombay and stayed with him. She traveled to London with her children, and she's the one, I think, very few people know, that introduced blouse concept of blouse and the sari, the way we wear saris. She
Oh,
learned that from the
okay.
Parsis, and she changed. Otherwise, saris were just 5 yards and they barely covered. And since you were not wearing a blouse, your posture was bowed all the time. So she liberated us. And today, the saris that we wear is really her. So she was a very dynamic person.
Amazing.
So
Okay.
when you stay in a nucleus family, you are deprived of so many things. And today everybody has a separate room, separate TV, separate this, no time to eat together. You just pick up your plate, and you've got your iPad or whatever. You're not hearing
iPod, yeah.
or something,
Headphones on. Yes.
headphones on, and you're not. So it's a different kind of life. uh, Ours was very different, and there was so much sharing. And like if I complained about my aunt, my mother would give me another slap. I said, so they were all, uh, like family. They had the equal right to scold us and had the, authority over us. So we grew up like that. So tolerance and sharing comes so easily to us,
Such
because we didn't
important values. Yes.
we didn't say this is mine. It was everybody's. Everybody could take anybody's. So it was a good upbringing. So I didn't
Uh,
have any problem coming to another family who also, you know, uh, my
Correct.
mother-in-law, my sisters-in-laws. So it was in fact very nice to have people all around. Somebody to talk to. So it was all bhara hua and fun.
I think And as you correctly said, if you can rise above the staff issues, because the staff are the ones who create the
Sometimes
problem.
there are little irritants that happen, like
Tell us the
you
story of the roses
have this roses, but sometimes the children have to be collected from school,
in school.
and
Yes.
I can see my brother-in-law has taken the car keys and is already out, and I'm saying, wait, wait, and those we have, 15 cars, maybe we had, one was self-driven and one was, so those things that can be irritant. So then I started hiding the car keys. So that kind of thing. And the staff
Okay.
are a big troublemaker. They'll go and
Yeah.
tell,
Always. Yes.
law, Begum Saab, um, because she was very fond of her roses. So she said, and some rose plant had died. She said, "हाँ बेगम साहब तो सब फूल वहाँ से काट लिया था तो." I mean, why would I do that? I mean, I obviously took one. I like flower
So,
arrangement. I took one rose
yeah.
from one side, one rose from another, and Bhopal was just full of roses. So these things happened. So
Yeah. That was a lovely story. That's why I wanted you to say that. Yes. So both you and Tiger Patodi lived so much in the public eye, and now you have your children and your grandchildren and your daughter-in-law and son-in-law, everybody in the same limelight. And of course, Temur, who is, I think, the most photographed celebrity. The paparazzi is crazy about him. How does it feel?
how does it feel? What? Sorry. What
How is it like being a part of all this? And what was the advice you gave? And when they wanted to enter the industry, what did you suggest to them? What are the words of wisdom that you shared?
I think I think a better way is to teach by example.
My
Words,
example,
I don't
yes.
think, giving advice doesn't really work, because obviously they know much more. I really don't know what works today. I have no idea except the basic things. Um, so I think they're all, you can um, give them a good education, you can expose them to the values that you believe in. The rest is up to them. And then you can't tell them how to exercise their option. If they choose to
Absolutely.
exercise it in a particular way, then you need to be supportive. And you then can't say that, oh, well, follow my diktat. So it's wonderful that the family is growing, and like I've got two grown-up grandchildren, Sarah and Ibrahim. They're in Gulmarg having a ball right now, and I
Okay.
love Sarah when she posts. She does a little limerick with it, which I think is so interesting.
So, Sharmila ji, I have some very special messages for you from some very special people in your life, and I'm going to just show them to you just now. So, can our
Okay.
technical team please show that? Let's watch it together.
Wishing you all a very happy Bengali New Year.
Also, to say, please stay safe, wear your mask, use your sanitizer, and stay home as much as possible. Please don't go to crowded places, and wishing you all the best. Ma, lots of love. Very proud of you, of course. Loved your work, loved all of your, earlier works and Satyajit Ray films and photography. And of course, Chupke Chupke is my favorite Hindi film, as you know. I think comic relief is usually the best. All the weepy, intense movies of yours I have loved, but just too much Kleenex have been used. So I think I'll stick to the comic roles. But I think you're fabulous. You've kept a great home. You've been a wonderful mum, wife, sister. I think you're quite an all-rounder. You speak well, and I've learned a lot from you. I keep a great home because I've learned it from you. I have a lot of faith because I've also learned that from you. You taught me intention, and which I also believe that it's your niyat that counts, and if your intention is right, you can't go wrong. I also keep a good home. I'm tidy. Of course, I have a bit of my own twerks, which is OCD completely. But I think I've taken your strengths and Abba's and combined it and made my own, concoction and added my own to it as well. But I hope this interview went really well, and I think I'm sorry I missed it, and of course I'm not going live. But lots of love, and of course, really, really proud of you, as you know. And stay safe, and please look after yourself. And you're somebody who just doesn't know how to sit at home, and you gallivant a lot. And I know that it's itching you to just like not be able to be contained. But I think these are times that we need to be careful. So please be very, very careful. I worry about you, and I think, inshallah, good times ahead. Missing our holidays, spending time together. I'm sure they'll come back with the family, all the kids, us, birthdays, and much more. So just hang in there, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Lots of love. Khuda Hafiz.
One more. We have one more very special message for you.
Okay.
On Safar right now. I hope this has surprised you. This was a planned surprise by Diya, where they wanted me to obviously say something about you and surprise you. I always get nervous when people ask me to talk about you, because when it comes to talking about such an icon, such a legend. I mean, what is there left to say? The whole world knows that probably my mother-in-law, who I'm lucky to call my mother-in-law, is one of the most elegant, one of the most graceful women to have walked the earth, if I may say. But I'm lucky enough to actually know deeper than that, which is that she's warm, she's loving, she's caring, someone who's always there, not just for her children, but also for her grandchildren, also for her daughter-in-law. Somebody who's always been so inclusive of me, who've made me feel part of this family. I have deep respect and regard for you, and I think the fact that this whole year has gone by where we've actually not been able to spend as much time as we did before the pandemic. You've not been able to see the little one, the new addition, and the family, but we're waiting to actually come together as a family, spend some time together with you.
That was so nice. Thank you, Diya. That we really must, because some people are in so much denial, because the lockdown so far has been very good, and I learned a lot, and I've done a lot of, I've learned about Greek tragedies, I've taken classes, like I saw lots of films, I've read lots of books. So it's been a very good journey so far. But having said that, seeing the new spike, what is happening now,
Yes,
and
of
I
course.
feel that it is a cause of, it's worrisome, because many people seem to be still in denial. And COVID appropriate behavior is the only thing, as Sabha mentioned, that what will save us. So we
Absolutely.
really should take it very seriously and tell everybody, while we this virtual mode, and maybe we can with mask meet some one on one, but we have to be very careful for the next 3 months, because I've been speaking to Dr. Guleria, who's my doctor, who helped me with my surgery, everything. He has been very vocal about it, that we have to, because this is, I mean, Delhi, you can't get a hospital bed
Yes,
for lung,
it's
and in
crazy.
Bombay, it's very difficult. So it's something to be scared of. So I mean, we don't want to end on that note, but
Yes, of course. Yes,
just that we must be very cautious, very cautious.
yes. Sorry for that slight internet snag that happened, but I do want to say one last thing before our Vice President joins us on screen, and that is there's so many beautiful stories you've shared, and I know I've just touched the tip of the iceberg. So, are you planning to write it all down? Are you planning to journal it, write a book? You have to do a memoir and
I
call it
just got
Safar.
patience. Um, yeah, I would. I like to. Let's see. I do write little articles here and there, But I don't know. Talking about myself is, um, well, the thought is there. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, that it's there are so much more, because like the milestones are out there and everybody can see,
Of
everybody's
course.
read, but there are a lot of other things that one can share perhaps. In
Yes.
fact, I'm reading a very interesting policymakers journal by Kaushik Basu, who was the chief economic advisor in Manmohan Singh's government for 3 years. Then he went on to World Bank. So he's written this in a diary form, and he talks about this, that, and the other. I mean, very pertinent and very serious stuff, but there is so much humor in it also. So it makes such a lovely read while you're learning and while you're
Of course.
uh,
Of course.
learning about how the government works, how the policymakers, uh, how do they get to their policy, etc. But he ends, or there is a touch of humor in everything, so that is so readable. So I don't know whether I have. Tiger has had a lot of humor, so I wish if I had that kind of humor, I would attempt a book. But I don't want to write a too serious a book.
I think you'll do a fabulous job. You must do that because even in our conversations today, there is just so many little snippets that you've related, which is so interesting to all of us. And it's really lovely. I hope you
Thank
do
you.
that, and I hope we can all enjoy that then.
Thank
So
you so much.
I'm
In
going to ask Sumita Di to join us back on screen. Sumita Di, can you join us?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah. Thank you for your truly immersive talk. Wonderful listening to your personal experiences. And thanks to Saba and Karina for their valuable messages. Thanks for giving your time. And thanks to our members, online viewers, and the media for support. Now, Diya will conclude the session. Thank you
Thank
Thank
once
you.
you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Sharmilaji, once again for your time. I think
Not
you've so successfully straddled all your myriad roles in diverse film genres, art house, crossover, mainstream, so much dignity, so much grace. And as Shami Kapoorji has perfectly said while he jived and he sang to you, from all of us here today at Ladies Study Group, तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी जिसने आपको बनाया. So thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you
And
very much.
thank you to all our audience who joined us today. Shubha Novoborsho in advance. And we will see you again in this auspicious month of April with more celebratory sessions, specially curated for you to keep our smiles on our faces. Thank you all again. And thank you, Sharmila ji, once more.